This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast. Hey, everybody, it's Lindsay Hine. Welcome to All Have Another with Lindsay Hine. I'm your host, and we are continuing on our wellness series. I had a little break week or two, maybe two, I think one. I don't know. Anyway, we've got another great episode here, and Emily Saul, our favorite sports psychologist, is on the podcast today. Really pumped to have her on the show. I've been a fan of her work for a long time. I have athletes that I coach in running who work with Emily and have seen amazing shifts in their mental health and how it not only pertains to their running, but life in general. Emily holds a master's degree in sports psychology, and she's a licensed mental health counselor. She's been heavily involved in the November Project in Boston. She was a Division I collegiate rower, coached strength and conditioning at Harvard for 7 years, and she's an avid marathon runner on the road and trail. Emily is such a gifted sports psychologist. She has a calming nature to the way she speaks to you. It's almost like when I talk to her, I immediately feel my nervous system just relaxing. It's pretty wild. She has a really great way of helping you put things into perspective. And I know you're going to love so many of the things we talk about in this episode. I hope it helps you with your next race, with your training, with your job. All of this that we talk about can pertain to so much more outside of running. And that is the gift that Emily gives all of us. So if you want to learn more about Emily, you can check out her website. It's esaulmovement.com. This entire wellness series, I called it the wellness one, is supported by Eternal. Eternal is a science-backed preventative health company built for anyone who takes their health and training seriously and wants to live up to their peak. Located in San Francisco and New York City, Eternal provides comprehensive, integrated primary care services in addition to advanced testing, personalized health planning. They go beyond your biomarkers and data to provide real answers to any of your health concerns. From proactive care, acute care, and expedited referrals to performance testing, physical therapy, and personal training, their healthcare providers care about you and the lifestyle you strive to live. Whether you're trying to hit a PR, avoid injury, or simply want a better handle on your health, Eternal gives you the full picture and a plan of action. It's the kind of primary care I've always dreamed was possible. Check them out at eternal.co and become a member today. That's eternal.co. Thanks again to Eternal for supporting personalized, evidence-based care for athletes like us. Friends, if you enjoyed this podcast, in this episode in particular, please leave us a quick rating and review on iTunes or wherever you are listening. It is greatly appreciated. All right, please enjoy my conversation with Emily Saul. All right, friends, we are continuing on the wellness series, and we have our favorite sports psychologist, Emily Saul. She's too humble to accept that probably, but that's what I think. Our favorite running sports psychologist, Emily Saul. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
So excited to have you on the show. Emily and I first connected. We actually did like a special relay podcast episode where I had Emily and one of the athletes I coach, Kara, come on and basically kind of just like talk through some race strategy feelings and how to get mentally tough for the race. And you've been working with Kara ever since, years later, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's really fun. I think it was a great example for people to be able to, see and hear what the mental preparation for a race like Boston can be like. And, certainly some of the very common things that come up in terms of feeling, nervous and, some of the expectation of feeling challenged or overwhelmed during the race and trying to put some strategies and plans in place to support Kara as she was going through Boston that day. So it's really fun.
Okay, for those that don't know you, let's just do a quick history on how you got into sports psychology.
Yeah. I was an athlete in college, so I walked onto the rowing team at my university, which happened to be a Division I school, which meant that I had the potential then, and I did earn a scholarship. And so I came through school with a degree in psychology and what I describe as really sort of a secondary education in athletics, just from the experience of being on a team. And so that really put the seed in my head around how much learning can happen through the medium of sport. And I got introduced from my coach in college to some of the concepts of sports psychology. We actually had someone, a rowing coach who is deeply steeped in sports psych practices, come and spend a weekend with my team. And so I started to pursue graduate education in sports psychology. And I didn't work initially directly in sports psych, working with athletes, but I worked with kids in an activity based group counseling setting. I worked at a nonprofit organization that was focused on helping adults working with kids incorporate a playful approach. And I've also been a strength coach, and I led the November Project for a number of years. And so I've always had my hands sort of in physical activity as a medium for growth and change and development for people. And so then it was 6 or 7 years ago that I started my current private practice, working directly with athletes, focusing on the mental side of sport. But I've always believed that there is as much, if not more, to learn from our experience with sport, both in traditional organized sport context, but any form of movement practice that we have is really just a space where we can do a lot of learning about ourselves. So I sometimes refer to it as like it's both a laboratory and a classroom. So we can kind of go in and get this like education in that classroom space about like who we are and how we operate and what we're interested in and what's meaningful to us, what challenges us, those sorts of things. And then it's also just this space of laboratory. Let's go try some things out. Let's experiment. Let's explore. Let's really kind of expand ourselves. So that's sort
Yeah.
of the background.
I mean, one of the things I know that several people I've talked to that have worked with you say is that your working with you is so much more than just like the mental side of running or
Hmm.
whatever sport it is. I don't know how far
Yeah.
outside of the running realm. I know you're very heavily involved in the running space,
Yeah.
but it kind of bleeds into just it's your entire life. This isn't just about the run.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, everything I just described, it's not, I mean, certainly I work with people who are like, I want to work toward this goal. I want to enhance and maximize my performance. I'm all for that as well. But I really believe that for any of us who have a movement practice, especially as we get into adulthood, it's for something, right? It's really the sport, the movement is just the medium, and we're using that as a vehicle to be able to do the learning, do that growth and development. And everybody, just as human beings, we're inclined toward wanting to strive and grow and continue to develop. And we have that opportunity far beyond just the scope of the metrics of running, for
Mhm.
example. Like you can certainly aim to get faster or run longer, do those sorts of things, but it's really about who are you becoming as a person along the way, even if what you're pursuing are time or the outcome types of goals. And so I find that working with a person is a pretty holistic thing, as in you can't just sort of separate out who the person is as a runner and ignore who they are as a person. They're often just so interconnected, even the way that people's relationship with running exists and then changes as a result of life. I've described to many people, so anyone who's talked with me has probably heard this, but I have this visual in my head of, the yin yang symbol where it's like
Uh-huh.
two things and they're interconnected. So I take that and I kind of turn it on its side so that one's on the bottom and one's on the top. And I think about the relationship between the rest of our life and, say, our running practice. If life is on the bottom and it's providing this really supportive space, it can be in that position when life is pretty predictable. So it doesn't always have to be calm or like have no stress or challenge, but it has to be pretty manageable and predictable. And when life is like that, then on the top, running can be this space where we're like, I'm going to go seek out some goals and I'm going to go challenge myself. But it really lives in that space of challenge. And when it's oriented like that, it tends to feel really good to challenge yourself, to stretch and kind of explore what you can do. But as soon as life becomes unpredictable, when enough kind of stuff becomes changing or difficult, the model sort of flips. And now life is in that space of challenge. And what happens, it's not that running disappears. For some people, it can become like we just have less time or we're less able to, but it's really about the relationship with it, that running becomes this place of support. So it is what kind of holds our hand or helps us through those times of challenge. And so, what happens for people if they're expecting running in that space of challenge, life is supporting that. And that's where they're like working toward a marathon and working through a training block or that sort of thing. And then the model flips, right? Life becomes challenging. They go, why am I having such a hard time feeling motivated? Or why am I like overwhelmed when I'm going to do my workouts or things like that? And so, just in understanding, like, these things are inseparable. Like, we don't just get to turn life off and be like, just stick to the plan, because sometimes you don't have the same you showing up. And sometimes you can go to that workout and just turn everything else off and find this beautiful zone of like, I'm just going to work hard and accomplish this like challenge start to finish and feel good about that. But other days, same workout, you're just like, I just want to sit down and cry. And so we have to be able to understand this. I don't think I could work with someone and just be like, well, let's just work on some mental tools for like being tougher, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
In those moments, it's about recognizing, running is playing a different role. Like, what do I need from my run right now in the context of how life is feeling? And then we can actually really effectively continue to move along even toward a training goal while there's a lot going on in life. But if I can't, in working with people, sort of touch on those pieces or even bring that into our conversations, then I'm pretty limited in how I can help people. So that's why for me, I think about people being like whole athlete humans,
Yeah.
our whole human athletes. So.
It's such a beautiful way to talk about it and think about it, and it's interesting as I hear you saying that, like, I'm sure the different personality types or, like, a type A person, compared to, like, a
Yeah.
type B person, this is really hard for them,
Yeah.
like, I'm the kind of person that I'm like, "Not feeling it today, I can move it," but you have a certain type of person who's like, "Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do today. This is
Yeah.
on the
Yep.
schedule."
That's
And
right.
it can sometimes get you into, like, really a hole because you
Mhm.
just keep going and going and going, and your body
Yeah.
really needs that break. How do you work with someone? And I think a lot of runners are like that because they are very goal-oriented people, and they wanna stick to the plan. They want to do good. They wanna check the box. How do you work with people to, like, say, "It's okay if we move things around a little bit"?
Yeah, I think one of the things I do with people is to focus on the definitions that we have for things like what's right and wrong or what success and failure mean. People who tend toward a type A personality have usually have a very strong sense of what is success, and anything other than that is just failure. So we tend toward that all or nothing thinking. And so that's one of the first places that I go. Let's just talk about how we're defining this, because success really is much more of a subjectively defined thing than some like moralistic. You're not like a good or a bad person because you did or didn't do a run. And so if people are open to that, we can start to look at in this context right now, like, you know, with the way that life is, or given what the challenges are, what some of the constraints are right now, let's talk about what success is. And so with that, I then really try to look at things in the frame of what's helpful and unhelpful rather than what's right or wrong or good or bad. Because to think about things in terms of what's right and wrong, we usually look for absolutes like rules, right? That's very moralistic. Um, but if we're looking at what's helpful and unhelpful, it shifts things so that it's much more contextual. Because if it's an 80-degree day, I might need sunscreen that's going to be more helpful than my puffy coat.
Hmm.
But if it's 20 degrees, my puffy coat's going to be more helpful to me. So if the question is, I'm going outside, what should I bring with me? It's not about there's a right thing or a wrong thing. It's about what's helpful in
Yeah.
this moment. Okay. And so if we can start to think about that, then, you get a day where there is something on the calendar and we notice that there's some feedback from the body, right? I'm not feeling it. I just don't have the energy. Or, sometimes it can be more, mental, emotional, like I just don't want to. But when that's happening and we focus on, okay, well, what's helpful in the bigger picture, both I mean, really, in moving toward that big goal for training for a marathon, we want to be moving toward that. And if you've got really low energy, you didn't get a lot of sleep the last couple of nights, you have a lot of extra stuff going on, you're squeezing this in where you've got a really small like window, no buffer of time, and you've got like a workout to do, it may not be the most helpful thing, as in to try to pile on all those circumstances, might put you, make you feel more anxious. It might make you feel more like you have the potential to fail this. It might, you might sort of break down, or it might be too much kind of training in the day or the week or whatever. And so in that moment, to do it, if you're looking at right and wrong, most people go, the right thing is follow the training plan to a T. So you would do it, but you might actually set yourself back physically, mentally, emotionally. Um, but if you look at it in terms of what's more helpful, you might say, okay, it will be most helpful for me to feel good, or like I've got some buffer of time so I can do this at a different time when I actually can get the most out of it or get the intended training effect, rather than just sort of forcing myself to cram things in when it's not the right time, or I don't have the right resources in my body to be able to do this well.
Yeah, I love thinking of it that way. What's helpful? Right. And like we want to do it too, partly because we're like, we want to get it over with. Right. Like
Yeah.
we have this like feeling of like, I want to feel that satisfaction and I want to be done with it. It would be helpful to get to a place where we aren't having that feeling of, I just want to get it over with.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways that I encourage people to do that is um, zooming out a little bit. So, say you've got to work, and this happens for a lot of people with specific workouts and long runs because they feel big, and they
And
usually
both, yeah.
have right. They usually have more parameters, right? Like do X number of
Mhm.
intervals at this pace range, or do this number of miles with these workout miles in the middle. And so, again, based on how people are defining success, they think that to do this correctly or to be right, to be successful, they have to do it all, do it exactly, and that's it. And so any variation feels like failure. So people go into it feeling truly like this is a test. I'm either going to pass it or fail it. I'll be right or wrong or good or bad. And that just amplifies anxiety, right? Which then means when you're activating anxiety, you're looking at the run itself, your nervous system, right? The mechanism of anxiety is perceiving the run itself as the threat. And therefore your body's response is going to be to try to protect yourself from it, as in close down, conserve, guard. And that is not how you're ever going to get the most out of those kinds of that kind of work in your run training. And so the shift, the reframe that I really like to look at is that every workout, every long run, especially because those are those kind of targeted training stimulus, that's a learning opportunity, not a test. And so if you can go in saying what is the design here, sort of from the design, if you've got a coach who's prescribing something for you, what's the intended effect of this? Not what am I testing here, but by exposing myself to this particular training stimulus, how am I intended to be different as a result? And so going in, looking at that, it's much easier to go, okay, so I'm supposed to get like really fatigued and then still work at this. So when I feel tired and I'm doing that last rep, that means I'm doing it right, instead of feeling like if I'm tired and I struggle to hit the pace, I've failed, and my coach is going to be disappointed and she's not going to want to work with me anymore. And like all the sort of domino thoughts that can happen. So shifting things to really look at like the goal is to get something from this, not to have to just like give and perform and test yourself. And that does change things for a lot of people. There's just this like, oh, relief, the sense of like, I can do that. I'm good at learning, right? None of us know if we're really excellent at performing on any particular day, but most of us are pretty good at learning.
This episode of I'll Have Another Podcast is supported by Foot Levelers. Foot Levelers custom orthotics simply work. Their process results in the highest quality, most comfortable custom orthotic on the market. Now, I'm someone that has extremely high arches and I just need support. I mean, my feet have to have it. The thing about Foot Levelers is they take a scan of your foot standing up. So with all of your body weight on your foot, it scans how your balance is settling on your foot, and they build a custom support system for your unique feet and body to suit the demands of your individual lifestyle and activities. If you want to learn more about Foot Levelers, I had Jamie Greenewalt, who is the president at Foot Levelers, come on the show. We do talk all about Foot Levelers and the power of how it helps support all three arches of the foot. We also talk about leadership and goal setting in the episode as well. Now, you do have to go to a provider to get scanned because they are that custom. This isn't like a big box situation. You can go to footlevelers.com to learn more, and there's a little box where you can hit find a provider and just enter in your zip code and see if there's one near you, which there will be because they are worldwide. Let me know if you try them out. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much, Foot Levelers, for doing the best to make sure that our bodies are supported. Footlevelers.com. All right, friends, back to the show. It's interesting because it makes me think of like when I talk to my kids and they're like complaining about something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
I'm always like, look, you have the agency to decide how you're going to perceive this. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to do it either way. So
Mm-hmm.
like you can choose to have a bad attitude or a good attitude about that.
Yeah.
And it's always like so interesting cuz it's like you don't want to bring this like toxic positivity like
Right.
this is an opportunity. I'm so grateful I get to move my body. Of
Yeah.
course we're grateful we get to do those things, but like there's got to be some way to like marry like normal human feelings with
Yeah.
optimism.
I agree. And that's where that frame of helpful, unhelpful becomes so useful, right? So somebody goes, but I have to do this long run and I get so stressed about it. And like, I'm just worried, like, what if I can't do it? Or what if my coach is upset? And usually before I ask someone to change how they're thinking about it, like, oh, don't think about it that way or say this to yourself instead, I just ask, so when you go into the long run, thinking about how much of a test this is and whether you're going to pass or fail and if your coach is going to like you on the other end of it, right? Or approve of you on the other end. Does that help you be able to do the running? And most people without sort of resistance to the question are like, no.
Mm.
Okay. So if that doesn't help, if that doesn't assist you in the physical task of doing the long run, can we look at it another way that might be more helpful to actually doing it? So what would it feel like if you reminded yourself that your coach only wants you to like learn and grow from this, not that she's looking to, cast you off or keep you in. But if the way that she's thinking about it is just that your goal is to learn and grow, does that help? Right? Does that feel any different? And even in kind of walking through that thought exercise, most people are able to go, yeah, that would be nice. Okay, then can you think that? Like, can you focus on that? Can you remind yourself of that going in? And anytime you start to go, oh, the anxiety rises or the worry kind of comes, you just go, no, that's that worried thought. I can stop that. And like, my coach just wants me to learn and grow. So are you learning and growing right now? Yes, then you're doing it. Success. Right. So that's kind of putting a bunch of things together that we talked about, like defining success is that way, framing things in a way that's much more helpful, and just continue to work on using tools that are helpful for you. So even when you're thinking about your kids, like, okay, so you're gonna do this. Feel free to decide if like
Yeah.
thinking of it as misery, does that help you get through it? Does that
Yep.
help you, do your best at it? Is it important to you to do your best at it? And if being miserable helps you, then by all means, right? I won't get in your way. And that's where kids actually learn agency, because when you give them the
Mm.
autonomy to make that choice, go, yeah, being miserable does help me, and then they're like, misery, 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 and then it doesn't actually help them, and they're like, that was kind of miserable. Then they themselves will build that insight, but that usually comes from the experience. But because you've
Yeah.
had the conversation, because they've chosen this is the way I'm going to go about it, then they've got their awareness is on, right? So they're much more able to be much more insightful because the priming of like, how
Uh-huh.
did that feel? Then they're like, they don't have to give you credit. They don't have to, say you were right, but they might just choose to do it a different way.
Gosh, that's such a good point. That's what they want, because
Yeah,
they want to know they made the choice, you didn't make
that's
them
right.
do it. That's such a
Mhm.
good point.
Yeah,
Okay, I want to give people some tangible things to take with them if they're lining up for a race. I mean, we've missed Chicago and New York by now because this is going out next Wednesday, but people are running the
right.
Indianapolis Monumental
That's
Marathon.
I heard there's a great event happening there.
Yes, thank you. Well, yeah, we have a great post-race party, and we've got CIM coming up. There's still a good
Right?
amount of fall races.
Philly is happening in
Yep,
November. Yep. There's a bunch of late season fall marathon races.
totally.
Yeah.
So, I got to sit on a call one time with you and the athlete I coach, Kara, and we kind of walked through her game plan for the day, and you did such a beautiful job helping her break down section by section how she was gonna think through the race.
Yeah.
And I thought today's call, it would be fun to kinda go through a similar type of routine, um, so that people running can kind of like, you think about the whole 26 miles and it freaks you out.
Absolutely.
So let's break this down for people so that they can, like, break it down and not feel so stressed.
Yeah. Um, I love the opportunity to frame out some of the really helpful tools for mentally preparing for a race. A lot of people will talk, if you have a coach, might talk about a pacing strategy or the race plan from that perspective. And I believe that having a mental race plan is so helpful. Couple different reasons. One is it does it does help a lot to have something to focus on while you're executing the race. So it's not just like, I'm going to stand on the starting line and hope I get to the finish line. It's really about having an intentional set of things that I'm going to focus on this, and it's going to affect me like that. And then I'm going to focus on this, and that's going to help me in this way, and so on. But having that mental race plan ahead of time also gives you something to work through, to practice. There can be some elements of like visualization, but even just walking through the chunks or the pieces of the race that reiterate for you ahead of time that first I'll be able to do this, and that's manageable, and then I'll do that next thing, and I can definitely do that, and then I'll get that next thing done, and yeah, I can do that. And so it reminds you as you rehearse that again and again that this is absolutely something you can do. And that ultimately is what we're working on, because as you mentioned, when you think about 26.2 miles, it feels big, and it doesn't matter if you've done 20-mile long runs or 21 or 2 or 3, like those long runs are great and they're physically preparing you for sure. But there's no point where anyone's brain thinks about 26 miles and just goes, no problem.
Mm.
Like, and that's actually by design. Our brains and the sort of survival systems that exist to help us navigate the various challenges that we might experience, they are geared they're geared primarily toward the physical challenges we might experience. So like the original survival brain is designed when human beings are living in a physical environment where there's a lot of threat. And so our brains are really responsive to the potential of physical threats. And threat is not only wild animals that might eat you for their meal, but threat is also essentially any challenge whose demands might be larger than our resources to respond to it. Okay. So the most like primitive, basic part of our brain is always trying to kind of calculate how much energy do we have, right? So that's like how much sleep is in our system and how many calories are in our system and like the really basic like fundamentals of how we function. And so if our brain has to kind of calculate, well, how much energy, how much of those resources do I need to run 26 miles? It's like probably a lot. And I probably don't have enough. And so it actually does that guarding, preservation, sort of ration our energy in the service of survival, because that part of our brain only cares about making sure that we survive. And here we are showing up at a starting line being like, I want to perform. And that's like a whole different objective than just survival. Okay. So, what we're doing by essentially breaking down the challenge of a marathon into very manageable pieces, we're leveraging what we know about how our brains work by saying, I'm never going to introduce the idea of a challenge, a task bigger than my brain very automatically goes, I can do that. Okay. So I call that like the of course distance, or like the of course I can kind of volume of running. Because if you think about whether it's 30 minutes from now until your next gel, or you think about a 3-mile chunk or maybe a 4-mile chunk, for a lot of people, it's somewhere in that distance where that's the only task that you're asking your brain to kind of consider, like, this is the next thing I have to do. And from the most basic level, it's not just intellectually, but more from that like body response, your body just goes, I got that. Then we've effectively given you like work to do and no fear response. So if we're not afraid of the task at hand, then we don't get that guarding, we don't get that protection, we don't get that desire to conserve. We actually get access to all of our capacity. And so what I like to do is I like to look at whatever race is happening. I look at several different factors, and each race there sometimes are different things that sort of make most sense in terms of how we're going to break things down. But just about everyone, if you're complying with all of the best recommendations about nutrition, you've got some interval of when you're going to take in your nutrition. And if you follow that, Megan Featherston
30
recommended 30
minutes?
minutes, then at the very most, you've got from the starting line to a 30-minute timer where you're going to take a gel. Okay. And that's a really easy one because we do want everyone to fuel themselves as they're going through. And so if that's an easy way to just go, I'm just gonna 30 minutes and 30 minutes and 30 minutes. So then when I'm standing at the starting line, at no point do I tell myself, okay, I've got, 8 30-minute chunks. Nope. You stand at the starting line, you go, 30 minutes. That's one. Okay. Just 30 minutes now to 30 minutes. And if you do look at the time on your watch, I always tell people either turn it to clock time and
Hmm.
you just like when you start it, you look at like, oh, it's like 8:12. So you're just looking for 12 and then 42 and then 12 and then 42. Like that's how you keep track if you're looking at clock time. Or if you're looking at your timer, it's just the zeros and the 30s. And you don't even have to pay attention to the other numbers. It's just anytime you see zeros or 30s, that's when you're taking your gels. Um, and so if that's a helpful chunking system to be able to just focus on, then at any point in the whole entire race, the biggest thing you've got to do is 30 minutes. And if you've completed a full cycle of marathon training, 30 minutes for most people shouldn't feel intimidating, right? It's not that it won't take effort, but it shouldn't feel intimidating. So your body is going to go, I can do that. And then you're going to get, the best, really going to be able to work at your capacity. Um, so that's one way to start chunking things down. I do find that for some race courses, they're like Chicago's a great example of where there's these really distinct sort of portions of the course where you can kind of, at Chicago, you've got that first 3 miles where you're kind of looping through the like zig and zagging over the river. And then you've got this like long out and back. And so you might think about that first 3 miles as just like your warm up chunk. And then you've got the out portion of the out and back. And then you just get back to the city. And so you can use the course to also think about like, I'm just getting from here to there. And then like, I don't have to worry about what happens after that. It's just this, each sort of piece at a time. And so for different races, I usually will kind of talk through with people, like there's that potential chunking of the nutrition, or if there's some distinction about the course. For some people, they might have like family or friends or spectators like at certain points. So then we might build those into the kind of chunks as like, okay, the next thing I'm looking for is this, and then you get it. And so we figure out, or, someone really can kind of think about what are those different pieces. Um, and as you're executing, one of the things I always recommend is to really keep yourself kind of present to that one piece. If and when your mind goes, but what about, how I'm going to feel at 20 miles, or you remember like, but this is one of 7, and it's like, you just, oh, that's okay. I don't have to think about that now. Like, I can handle that when I get to it. Come back to this chunk. All I have to do. And so it's really is a skill of mindfulness that we're asking people to practice, just coming back to that one piece. And when you finish it, really like, done, did it, success, like
Yeah.
absolutely allowing this the celebration essentially of completing something. And that too, there's major psychological benefit to that. If I know that I've got that 30-minute chunk in front of me and I take my gel and I'm like, yeah, took my gel, finished that 30 minutes, and I kind of just like let it just disappear, as in like that is done. I accomplished it. And now like I don't have to hold on to it anymore. And the only thing I have is just this, okay, 30 minutes. What that's doing is it's allowing you to actually feel a sense of accomplishment that typically we're delaying and delaying and delaying as this one and
Mhm.
singular feeling of accomplishment that you get only if you get to the finish line, right? And so we're really leveraging that, like, we respond very well to reinforcement. And so if we let our brains feel a sense of accomplishment, that's like reinforcement that, like, I'm doing the thing. And it's much easier to want to dive into the next manageable task.
Ah, yeah, that's so good. One of the
Yeah.
things, I posted about this a couple days ago, like, I always found this is tricky though, that I ran my best races
Hmm.
when I took the pressure off, but
Yeah.
it
Hmm.
was like it's like a double-edged sword a little bit because I would be like almost like I would do something to give myself an excuse as to why I might not execute perfectly and to make it okay that I didn't. So in a bit of a way, I was like a little bit self-sabotaging, but it's like
Okay.
if I could get to the place where I could somehow marry those 2 things, where I like take the pressure off and know that, hey, this is just running. I do care about it, so I don't need to, like, rake leaves for 2 hours the day before the marathon so that I have that excuse to fall back on, that's why, you know? Um,
Right.
Because that
Yeah.
thing, whatever that
Yeah.
external thing is, always would give me, like, the, "Hey, I'm not taking this too seriously."
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you may have in the past used a physical reason. You can call it an excuse, but you're
Yeah.
creating a physical reason to then psychologically feel less pressure.
Yes.
Okay. And so if we understand that what you're looking for is psychologically less pressure, you don't have to introduce this other physical reason to potentially limit your physical ability. That's where a lot of the work I do with people is around how we're framing success. And so we will also talk not only about outcome goals, like, hey, I'm aiming for this time, or, I want to, finish in a higher percentage or podium or, placement, those real outcome metrics. But I also ask people to identify process goals and experience goals. So process goals are, what are the things you're going to work on executing as you go through the race, that allow one that you are very much influential of, not necessarily that you can control, but you have a high level of agency about, and that you can feel that sense of accomplishment as you're going through. So, fueling effectively, that's a great example of a process goal. So every time you take your gel, you're like, I'm doing it, right? You have no idea what your outcome time is yet, but you know that you're executing on the thing you intended to do. Okay.
Mhm.
And we can identify, this is where it gets down to each individual person, it's much more specific. But for a lot of people, process goals might be around how they talk to themselves. So, when they feel a little bit of challenge, rather than going like, oh, see, I knew you couldn't do this, saying something much more helpful, because that's not particularly helpful. It might mean being intentional about how they're going to respond to just unexpected things that come up. So again, instead of having a, like, oh no, like, activating fear response to some of those things, being like, ah, of course this is happening. This is a marathon. Things like that happen all the time. I just didn't know when it was going to happen or which one of those unexpected things it was, but found it. Um, like, that's a really different and much more helpful way to respond. So, the process goals again do get really specific to the person, but it's about, like, what helps you to focus on doing that supports performing at your best, right? Working to your capacity. So sometimes process goals might be around like running mechanics, just kind of checking in on and making sure that you've got form. Like, so there might be some physical cues that you're using. So if you keep executing on those all the way along, we still don't know exactly what time it's going to produce, but you're putting yourself in the best position by doing the things and focusing on the things that are most helpful to an optimal performance. Um, and then the experience goals are similar. They're much more about how do you want to feel, not really physically because we don't always have great control over that, but that's like I think of it as like head and heart. How do you want to feel? So do you want to feel excited? Do you want to feel joyful? Do you want to feel grateful? Do you want to feel strong and focused? Do you want to feel miserable? Like, how do you want to feel? And then there's lots, again, lots of mental tools that you can use to both bring your attention there, sort of create that intentionality of, I want to feel these things. So that's where when you and I talked with Kara making her race plan, a lot of the sort of themes for each of those chunks were really focused on how they were going to help to make her feel. So if we label that first chunk, that's just warming up. So like your cue is like, settle in, right? If all I'm focused on in terms of words is like settle in, but what I'm letting my body feel is a settling in that whole first 30 minutes, I'm probably going to feel settled.
Yeah.
Right? Like I might feel calmer, I might feel a little bit more sense of rhythm, and that's great. That's helpful. And so then we can think about during different portions of the race, are there certain cues or kind of themes or, quotes or mantras that we want to incorporate that help to create more of that feeling? Because when someone is feeling in whatever ways are going to be helpful to them, that also supports their body doing what it's capable of doing. And so all of this is really in service of kind of using our mind to get out of the way so that our physical
Yeah.
body can just go do what we're trained and capable of doing. Because if we let our mind sort of get in the way, create those obstacles, where it's very good at eliciting fear or doing that kind of constrict and protect, because our survival brain is always going to prioritize survival, and we're over here trying to like focus on performance. So we have to in a lot of ways kind of get our thinking mind or get our mind out of the way so that our bodies will just do what they're able to do.
Hey, everybody, listen up. I cannot wait to head down to the Donna Marathon weekend. This weekend is one of my favorite weekends of the entire year. The weekend of January 30th to February 1st. This is Destination Love. If you have a 5K, half marathon, or marathon in your sights coming up, run with us. I always do the half, although this year I might be doing the 5K. If you have a goal half marathon or marathon this spring, this is a great way to set the tone of your training and get settled in. The beautiful thing about this race is it helps provide support to people walking through a breast cancer diagnosis, and they work directly with the Mayo Clinic and they fund groundbreaking research. I have been joining the Donna Marathon team for several years now, and it is the highlight of my year. I love getting the year started with this race. It's on the beautiful beaches of Jacksonville, Florida, and I am telling you, you will not be at a more positive race. I love all the different marathons I get to go to for different reasons, but there is something truly special, magical, and hopeful about the Donna Marathon weekend. Love over fear is their motto, and you feel it every step of the way. Go to breastcancermarathon.com and use the code Lindsay10 for 10% off your entry. Also, I want to tell you, you can still enter to win a trip for the Donna Marathon weekend, where they give away a 3-night stay at the Hilton Jacksonville at Mayo Clinic, 2 race entries of your choice of events, any of the races, and access to exclusive VIP events, a complimentary race day shuttle service. We are going to have the best time. Go enter to win. Go to breastcancermarathon.com/winatrip2026/ If you just go to their website, breastcancermarathon.com, you can find that information. I will also link it in my Instagram, LindsayHine626. All right, friends. Lindsay10 is your code to get 10% off the registration. Let me know if you're going to be down there. I'd love to see you. Love over fear, breastcancermarathon.com. All right, friends, back to the show. Yeah, it's the thing about the marathon is like all the nerves leading up, and then usually once the gun goes off, you are okay. Like you do settle in. Um, it's just fascinating that we let our brains get in that protection mode for so
Mhm.
long
Yeah.
because we're worried about what the last 8 miles are going to feel like. When really those first 18 miles aren't going to feel that bad. Like you got to
Maybe.
work. You got to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
if
Sure.
you're going for a big time goal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like that real pain if you fuel
Mhm.
right and you're trained right
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So you have like an hour of like this is really hard, but you don't
Yeah.
have 3 or 4 hours of that really.
Yeah, for the most part, and the my only caveat that I would add to that is, I think that that actually is one of the things that is most dysregulating for people is when they feel some kind of physical sensation earlier than you just
Yes.
said, and they go, "Oh no!" Right? This means it's the end of the world,
Yes.
which is why I focus so much on like okay, so that's a sensation. And like that's normal within a marathon. So that just because you feel something now is not a guarantee you're going to feel it in 2 miles or 5 miles or 10 miles. Just because this feels difficult right now, like this is not what you need to try to anticipate feeling at mile 24 to go how will I do that then, like you don't have to know how you're going to do that then. What you do need to know right now is can you get back to a size of work that feels manageable? Can you re-engage with tools that help you right now? So if you do feel this, you're safe, you're okay, what's going to help? Like, what are my choices in this moment? And then make the very best decision that you can. Okay. So if you're 3 miles in and you feel something very uncomfortable and you're just like, this feels hard and it shouldn't feel hard. Lindsay told me it shouldn't feel hard until mile 18, but it's mile 3. Okay. So it feels challenging. So what are your options, right? What are your actual choices right now? You could keep going and just see what your body can do. You could slow down. You could stop. Those are basically your 3 options from a
Yeah.
physical perspective, right? And so unless there's something that's like, very specific and, very kind of pointed or clear, like I just rolled my ankle, like, okay, we've got to address that, right? But if it's just normal sort of like, this just feels harder than I thought it would or than I thought it should, if you're at mile 3 and you've done all of your training, a really good choice right then is to keep working at the level you're working at and then use mental tools to work on settling your emotions, right? Settling your nervous system, just so you might then focus on things like you're safe, you're okay, like you can do this. You don't have to feel good in order to be able to do things sometimes. And because you've got the training, you're capable of doing this. So you can work through, for a lot of people, you can work through some of those challenges just by focusing on, like, okay, so this is a sensation. What do I need? What are my choices? And just what's the most helpful decision for me? What's the best decision for me in this moment, given what it is I'm trying to do? And that can get people through a lot of different situations.
I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
such a good point because, like, we talked about how you come up with pace plans with your coaches, but like, you can't predict what is going to happen out there. So that's why this mental
No.
plan matters so much.
Yep. Yeah. And it actually is why, like, even though the the pacing strategy is often so very well intended, it usually comes along with certain cues, like, and you should feel great, and and like you
Uh-huh.
and so people go, "But I don't, and I should." And they immediately go, "Therefore, this is wrong, this is bad," and we get a fear response. And so if we actually work on being way more open to a variety of things, like you might feel great and you might not. And that actually does not matter in the context of you're still going to have choices. You're still going to be able to make a good decision in that moment. And you're still going to try to use the physical training you have to the best of your ability that day.
Totally.
Still the point, right? That's
Yeah.
still the option.
The podcast episode I posted today is with Rory Linkletter, who he just placed ninth in Chicago, and he was talking about how he had all these game time decisions he had to make because like his pace group was like just behind Connor Mance's pace group, and so like it was close enough though that he was like, "This is stupid. Why aren't we together?" So even though like that pace was a little hotter than he wanted it to be, he was like, "This makes more sense with the wind and everything." So they get up there, and then a little bit later, he realizes, "No, no, no, no. This is too fast. These guys are dropping like 430 miles. Like this is not sustainable for me." So he had to decide like, "I'm gonna run these last 10 miles alone." And that's hard, and I'm feeling this, like, I'm feeling like this is too fast, but he could have decided to, like, stay with them and possibly blow up. He could have decided to slow down a lot and be like, "My r race is over, I'm not getting the Canadian record." But instead, he just decided to, like, back off a little bit and just keep hammering, like, keep going after, and he still had a PR. He didn't get that, like, Canadian record goal, but, like, he executed that race to the best of his abilities even though it didn't play out how he might have hoped it would have.
Exactly. And I think the vast majority of marathon running does not play out the way that we plan. Right? So like let's just collectively like stop expecting that it is going
Yeah,
to play out just because you made a plan. You can want all you want and that does not make it magically happen, but it sounds like what he was able to do was he was able to make the best decision for him in that moment based on what was important to him. Right? So, he might have said, "Yeah, I wanna go for the Canadian record, and, like, since that seems off the table, like, let me just stop, like, I
yeah.
could end this madness right now."
Try again another time, yeah.
And right? And so he was able to say, "Okay, that is important, but, since that's not happening, I have to, like, quickly adapt and, like, let that not be my focus. And so next, what is most important is having maybe the most consistent or the strongest performance that I can based on what I've got today." And so he didn't opt to try to stay in for as long as he could and then blow up. He really dialed in to run his race, and he still ends up with a PR and probably a lot of pride in, navigating the choices of a challenging race, but that he, seemed to execute again to the best of his ability, given what the day offered him.
So good. Okay. See, we're already at 50 minutes. How did this
I know.
happen? We're gonna wrap here with end of podcast questions. I just have to publicly thank you because when I had my surgery 2 years ago, I went back and looked through the emails and I like posted that I was having my hysterectomy and it was really vulnerable. Like I felt weird sharing it for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just felt like I was giving so much of myself to, but I felt like also I really wanted to share because internally I wanted the support.
Yes.
I
And I'm
wanted
so
the
glad you did
support.
it to get that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But you sent me like the nicest I could like cry thinking about it because it was just like the most genuine, heartfelt business aside, like, and just gave me some ways to like kind of think about how I was processing like my identity post surgery. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you for that response. I'm glad it landed well, and yeah, I think especially in the world of social media, it's a really challenging thing to decide how we navigate certain things. And what I always sort of offer, whether it's like directly in an email or just sort of in my own thoughts, I always hope that when people are sharing something, that they are doing it because it is the most helpful decision for them,
Mm,
right? Like
yeah.
I hope that you are able to get from that what you are looking for. And it definitely seemed the way that you shared about that you were like, this is happening, and I am owning that it is happening, and not like afraid of it necessarily, but like it's also big, and like there's a lot of unknown about it. Like, don't know how this is going to change, how my body feels, or how I run, or
Yes.
anything else. And that was the piece that I just was really kind of connecting to, is that when we don't know, it's hard to know how to navigate some of those identity shifts, in the ways that they show up. And so just I was just wanting to be supportive of that process, which doesn't happen like a switch. It is much more of a transition of things, and that just that there's lots of opportunity to continue to feel, connected to who you are, and feel connected to your values and kind of who and how you are, even if sometimes the physical activity changes, um, in certain ways. So anyway,
And we all experience it in one way or the other because time keeps
absolutely.
ticking.
Yes, it does.
All right, what's something professionally or personally you would like to do, Emily, that you have not done yet?
Ooh, man, I was thinking about this, and I think there's always like physical things in terms of like races, or physical challenges, things like that. So without any super specific ones, I think I just continue to want to feel a sense of like adventure, and like novelty in some of the things that I do physically. I did the rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon last
Fun.
year, and like that was so great,
Was this
after
so
having
hard?
been through. Yeah, so hard. Um, and so I love opportunities to just kind of do different things like that. I feel like they're great spaces to challenge me. But I think professionally, I'm really curious about doing some kind of retreat, maybe.
Nice.
And I think I want to do more writing. I know the world is sort of filled right now with people. Everyone's writing a newsletter, but yeah. So that's it.
I did look on your website and I was like, "Oh, that's from 2019."
Yeah. Yep.
Something that you wrote. It's still
Yeah.
really good.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, static living on my website, but
I know.
yeah.
I think all the time how much more I wanna write, and then I just don't make time for it, but I like it. It's therapeutic. Yeah,
Yeah,
it feels good, and you have a lot of good things
exactly.
to say, so we will look forward to 2025 being on the top of those posts.
Okay, thanks.
Love it. Okay, 2 more questions. Book
Yeah.
recommendations?
I was thinking about this, and there are just so many good books, but the 2 that I would throw out if people haven't read them. Ellen Langer as the author,
Okay,
one of her books is called Mindfulness, and the other is called The Mindful Body. And they both are. It's not mindfulness in the traditional like build a meditation practice, but she gives a ton of information about basically the power that our minds hold in creating really like scientifically measurable like effects in how we experience things. So I love both of those books.
okay. Last message to leave with our audience.
I think it's probably a little cliche, but I really just hope that people continue to use your movement in a way that helps you grow, rather than doing something because you think you should, or because that's what everyone else is doing, or because that's what's popular on social media. But like really embrace running your own race, embrace like success as you define it, and just let it be something that serves you, rather than you feeling like you're sort of imprisoned by it.
Love that so much. Emily Saul, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for all you do in the running world too. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Emily, for joining us on the podcast. I know you guys took so much from that episode with Emily. She is simply amazing. Saul Movement, ESAUL movement.com is Emily's website. You can learn more about this show and all the shows in our network at sandyboyproductions.com, including our newest podcast in the network, Inspired Souls. We also have the Mother Runners, Finish Lines, and Milestones, the Trail Network podcast, and as many of you know, I'm the co-host of the Relay podcast and Road to the Trials. One of the co-hosts, I should say. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you all so very much. If this episode meant anything to you, helped you out in any way, please feel free to share it on your socials or with your inner circle. I'd love to get the word out to more people and get these messages from Emily in their ears. You can only walk away with positivity after you talk to Emily, in my humble opinion. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you Friday. We've got an episode with Annie Frisbee coming out this Friday. Have a great rest of your day.